This lesson will be for drawing contour lines onto topographic maps. Contour lines are the greatest distinguishing feature of a topographic map. Contour lines are drawn on a map connecting points of equal elevation, meaning if you physically followed a contour line, elevation would remain constant. Contour lines show elevation and the shape of the terrain. They're useful because they illustrate the shape of the land surface, its topography, onto a map. Let's look at the rules that contour lines follow. First rule, contour lines remain at the same elevation. Now remember, if you were to physically walk a contour line, you would neither go up or down in elevation. You would remain at a consistent or constant elevation. Contour lines always close. Now this may not be apparent on the map in which you're looking. Contour lines can appear to end when they reach the edge of the map that you're viewing. They will, however, eventually meet up. This may be on a completely separate map, however. Contour lines never merge. To merge or to cross would indicate differing elevations at the same location. This would be impossible. We cannot have an elevation, for example, of 2,000 feet at one point and have another elevation of 2,100 feet at the same point. This would be an impossibility. Contour lines will also encircle hilltops. If you look for bullseyes or something similar to a bullseye, you'll see a hilltop. So if you look here, this would indicate down below what a hilltop might look like. If you have the similar image but with hatch marks, this indicates a depression, like an open pit or a basin. Contour lines bend upstream, typically making a V or U shape as they cross the stream. Also, if two adjacent contour lines have the same elevation, a change in slope is occurring between them. Well, let's look at this map. We can see here that we already have some points with elevations on them. These points, this would be like a person going out to a particular location. They'd identify their latitude and their longitude and then take a reading for elevation. They can then map that directly to their map. Now, the next thing we need to do is connect points of equal elevation to one another, following the rules of contours. But before we can do that, if we look at this map, we don't really have enough points to do connections, so we may need to add a few points. We can do this by looking between sections. For this map, we're going to use a contour interval of 100 feet. So I'm going to start up here in the corner. I can see here that I have a 650 and a 550. If I'm using a contour interval of 600 feet, then I should have a 600-foot contour point in between the two. So looking at these two, there should be a 600-point elevation right between the two, almost halfway in between. The same down here with the 450 to the 550. I should have a point at 500 feet directly between the two, halfway in between. So I can put those in there. So I'll put a point 400 and a point 500. I'm going to go around the map and do the same thing, looking between points and putting in additional sections that are counting in hundreds. So down here, between this 498 and 550, I can put a 500 point. That 500 should be really close to that 498 rather than the 550 if this was a straight line. I can put another one down at the bottom here. I've got a 400 here and a 596 here. This is almost 600. So that means that between 400 and almost 600, about halfway in between, there should be a 500 point. So I can go around the map doing this. Another one here between the 396 and the 498, I should have a 400, so I placed in there a 400. Another one here between the 550 and the 605, I should have a 600 that's rather close to the 605, so I put a 600 point in. So let's just put a few more on here. Put a 600 down there at the bottom of the page, a 700 over here between the 680 and the 750. Now I've got probably enough points to start drawing. Now you can see here, just drew in a line from the 400 between these two 400s, and just drew it right off the page. All right, that's indicating the edge of my map. And then I'm going to connect that 400 to the other 400 that's right here at the stream. Once I cross that stream, I know that by the rules that this should make a V shape. So to make a V shape, I'm going to have to drop down to this other 400 down at the bottom of the page, and then it's the last 400 and off the map. So I'm going to draw that in there. Now I've made a V shape. I've also made a really nice contour line that I can follow. Once you have a good contour line, the other contour lines should follow in suit. They're not going to be straight or jagged. They'll take on a curved nature. So your lines should be flowing, they should be curving, they shouldn't be straight lines. So now that I have the 400, let's try putting in a 500 line. So I have that 500 to that other 500. Now I can come up to the stream. I know that somewhere between this 400 here and this 600 here, about halfway in between, I should be crossing with a 500 and making a V shape. So I come up here and I cross that stream, connecting those other 500s. Now I can draw in a 600. So there's my 600, and I know that it's going to follow a similar shape to these two down here. So even though I don't have a point over here to draw that line out to, I run off the page because I know that that 600 has to kind of follow that same shape. I'm also now going to have to come over here and connect it to the 600 that's at the stream and complete it. Now I'm going to cross the stream and come down and connect into my other 600s that I have on the page. There we go. So I've made all the ones that are probably going to cross the stream, but I see over here that I still have some 700s and probably an 800, and so I'm just going to connect these 700s kind of following the same flow as this 600 line, just following that same shape and connecting those points, nice and flowing. And then I have an 800 mark, which I'm going to put in here as well, and I'm just going to follow that same shape as that 800 or that 700 line to put in the 800. And there we go. So now I put in my contour lines. Now you can put in the points physically like I did here. We can also do this visually. Sometimes you can just look at the map and you can tell, all right, I need to run between these two points and put a line in. This one's a little bit more complicated. It's also a little bit more complicated than the ones that you were given in your assignment, but it's a good example. We've got 3 streams here, so we know that we're going to have some lines that are crossing in different ways. What I'm going to do is start out here. I'm going to look at an 800 line. I know that an 800 line has to run here. You can see this time I didn't put points in. I just sort of eyeballed it. I know an 800 has to come in. This line probably should have come a little closer to the 799, and that's okay. Sometimes you might get a little bit off. That's why you're going to use pencils when you make these so that you can erase them and bring them back. But this one's just a little bit of an example just to kind of get you seeing the shape. So I'm going to continue with this one as it is. And I'm going to connect another point. So you can see I came up, I hit about where I think between these 780 and the 894 where I think the 800 line would run. And then it kind of dips in again and makes another V or U shape. Again, where I think the 800 line would fall between the 781 and the 900. Coming around and catching that 800 that exists. Now this thing's going to have to come up and it's going to have to cross the stream again. This time it's going to cross just under the 801 since it's an 800 line. So I'll bring it there. I'll come around, make that V shape, catch that 800 and come off the page. So now I've got a reasonable line to follow for my other contour lines. So from the 800 I could start to draw my 900 in. So over here to the side, just kind of drew in a 900. The 900 should come close to that 902 and then come up just above, and we'll follow around. So again, we have our U's or our V shapes when we cross the stream and we catch them. And they're, if you notice, once I've got one good line, the others lines will just kind of follow suit. They're going to stay nice and curved, follow the same shape as the other line. So I can put 1,000 line over here on the side. I know there has to be 1,000 one over here, and it's got to follow the same shape as that 900 over here. We'll put in the 1,100 as well, following that same shape. Now let's go to the middle there. There's a 700 in there, so we'll put a 700 following the same shape. You notice over here as the 700 followed the shape of the 800, it came up and hit the stream about where we'd probably see between the 780 and the 692. That 700 has to be pretty close to that 692, so it doesn't go too far up the stream. It still dips in a little bit and then comes back up, hits that other 700, went off the page. Put in a 600 in there right at the bottom. Now let's come over here and go to the bottom of the page. We can see the shape of the 900 line, so there's got to be a 1,000 line that kind of follows a similar shape that drops in there. And then coming to the right side of the page, a 1,000 line following about the same shape, and then an 1,100 line, again following approximately that same shape running up through there. Okay, so this is the creation of a topographic map. All right, we've just created some contour lines using some known elevation points already mapped on to our map. Once you've done this, you should label all of your lines. So I'm going to come back in here. My 1,100, I've just labeled it over here. My 1,000, I've labeled it. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to label each of these lines, so if I'm reading it, I can tell what each of my elevations are. So each line has been labeled. Now you're going to return and do the same thing in your lab book. And just to kind of help you out here, here's the first topographic map that you're going to be working with, and I'm going to draw a line in for you. So I'm going to give you a starting point. So there's a line, there's approximately where your line should go. So you should copy this into your lab manual so that you have one to kind of follow. Gives you a good line to start with so that the others, you know how the others should flow. Don't forget to label it. So I'm going to put that 200 on there. You're going to do the same on your maps. Coming here, here's the second one. So there's your 100 contour line. I'm going to label that one as well. So you're going to put on your other lines onto this map. You have a 200, a 300, a 400, and a 500. There's your third map, and there's your line. So I put in the 300 this time. You're going to have a 100, a 200, a 300, a 400, a 500, a 600, and a 700 onto this map. All right, so that concludes drawing contour lines onto a topographic map.